Gear up for adventure. To catch 'em all in Pokémon Crystal version, you'll need super effective strategies with the inside info, critical stats, and detailed maps that only the elite trainers at Nintendo Power could supply. The secrets to becoming a Pokemon Master will become crystal clear. This is the Boxhead Baron, and today we're going to take a look at the differences between Pokemon Crystal and Pokemon Gold and Silver. Specifically, we're going to look at the changes as they're listed in the official Nintendo Power Player's Guide. For those not in the know, Pokemon Crystal is an extension or an expansion of Pokemon Gold and Silver, which collectively make up the Generation 2 Pokemon games. Like the yellow version in Generation 1, Pokemon Crystal also costed full retail price when it released. I thought it'd be kind of fun to take a look back and see what exactly got changed up for the Crystal version. And luckily for us, Nintendo released a full player's guide that also works with the Gold and Silver games. So it lists everything for Gold, Silver, and Crystal all in one book. So everything within this book that's in blue text is Crystal exclusive content. So right here on the first page, we have our first piece of exclusive content. It's the new heroine. This isn't drugs we're talking about, this is people. Surprisingly, Crystal version was the first version where you could pick between a boy or a girl. And this is definitely something that got passed forward in every game that came after it. Pages 10 and 11 run through some of the bigger changes in the Crystal version. Crystal exclusive. While many of the features and story situations in Pokemon Crystal version are identical to those in Pokemon Gold version and Silver version, there are also some great new additions that are exclusive to the latest incarnation of the game. They include new characters, new items, and some changes in Pokemon powers. Secrets of Suicune revealed. This goes over the new character that was added to this game, and that's Usain or Usain. I'm really sorry for my pronunciations, guys, but he didn't exist at all in Gold and Silver. This area also highlights the differences in how you encounter Suicune, and how it's now a story encounter. Whereas in Gold and Silver, he was just like the other two legendary dog Pokemon, which I don't know if that's the official name of the legendary trio of this generation, but that's what me and my brothers always called them. But in Gold and Silver, he was just like the other two, Raikou and Entei. They would just run around on the map and you would randomly encounter them, and you'd have to keep checking the Pokedex over and over again to find out which area they had ran off to, and hope you happen to be in the same area at the same time in order to run into them. And in Crystal, that's no longer the case now for Suicune. He's now a guaranteed story encounter. Unknown mystery in the ruins of Alph. In Pokemon Crystal, the unknown chambers now have a secret message that you can decipher, and when you perform an action, they'll actually open up treasure rooms. So this was a new addition to Crystal as well. Rainbow Wing variations. The Rainbow Wing is required in Generation 2 in order to acquire Ho-Oh. This is just telling you basically the method of obtaining the Rainbow Wing is now different in Pokemon Crystal. When Crystal, you actually need to capture Suicune, Raikou, and Entei before you can acquire the Rainbow Wing. Old location, new challenge. In Gold and Silver, after you beat Claire, you had to go into the Dragon's Den to retrieve the Dragon's Fang, and then she would give you your gym badge. And in Pokemon Crystal, you still have to enter the Dragon's Den, but instead of grabbing the Dragon's Fang and then getting your gym badge, you have to answer some trivia questions instead. So that's pretty cool. And then you can actually return to the Dragon's Den even later to receive a special Dratini that knows extreme speed. Radio rewards. A new radio show transmitting from the Goldenrod City Radio Tower from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. offers a chance to earn many useful items. Buena, the host of the show, sends out a password on every nightly broadcast. When you visit Buena on the second floor of the radio tower and give her the password, she'll give you credit that you can redeem for valuable prizes. Unfortunately, the prizes for this are kinda meh, but you could get rare candies from this, or nuggets if you wanted money. Telephone tips from trainers. This details some of the new additions to the trainer calling mechanic that was present inside of Gold and Silver. In Gold and Silver, the trainers would not call you to give you water stones or fire stones or other evolutionary stones, and that's something that was actually added in Pokemon Crystal version. And it's a pretty big addition because the stones are extremely hard to come by in Generation 2. The only real way was to get them from Bill's Cottage, which is all the way in the post game. Gating these behind people randomly calling you up in Crystal version is still kind of a pain in the ass, and it's not very efficient, but it's way better than the way it was in Gold and Silver. See the Seer. There's now an old lady inside of Cyanwood City, and she'll evaluate your Pokemon for you. And basically, like this thing is telling you, she'll just tell you where your Pokemon was caught at. I'll be honest, this has to be unobjectively one of the worst additions. It's just kinda pointless. Train with the tutor. There's now a move tutor that will appear after you beat the Elite Four in front of the Goldenrod City game corner, but only on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and he will offer to teach your Pokemon either Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, or Ice Beam in exchange for 4,000 game coins. Kind of a cool addition, I guess, more for competitive play than anything, but it's pretty grindy and expensive to get even one of these moves. Odd Egg. The man in the Pokemon Daycare on Route 34 will give you the Odd Egg the first time you speak to him. It will hatch into a Smoochum, Elekid, Magby, Pichu, Cleffa, or Igglybuff that knows the move Dizzy Punch. Basically, you get a second egg for free in this game, in addition to the Togepi egg. Okay, page 12. New abilities in Crystal. This is where it shows you all the moveset changes for Pokemon in the Crystal version. If they have a C next to the attack name, that means it's Crystal version only. And if they have a G and S after the name, then it's Gold and Silver only. So Spinarak and Ariados, for example, they learned Screech in Gold and Silver, whereas they learn Agility now in Crystal version. It seems like a relatively minor difference here. Yanma here, though, he got more of a buff. He used to learn Swift in Gold and Silver at level 37, and now in Crystal he learns Wing Attack, which has a higher base power in general, and it also gets stab bonus with Yanma since he's part flying type. Quillfish now has spikes by default. The dashed line here just symbolizes that this is a default move that it always has at level 1. So if you caught a low enough level Quillfish, it'll know this, or if you hatched one from an egg. The Hop-Hip line got just a very small change. In Gold and Silver, Synthesis was just part of their base moveset, so they just knew it from level 1. And in Crystal, they've changed it so it learns it when it reaches level 5 instead. This was probably done because in Pokemon Crystal, you can actually catch Hop-Hip earlier in the game, and they probably wanted to avoid a scenario where you were encountering Hop-Hips at too early, and you couldn't actually knock them out because they would heal too fast. To get around that, it looks like Game Freak just adjusted the level that Synthesis is learned at. Magneton now learns Tri-Attack at level 35 instead of Swift. This was probably done because it just kind of makes sense since there's 3 Magnemites hooked together to make a Magneton. Eevee gets a small but pretty big change. At level 36, it no longer learns Focus Energy. Instead, it has Baton Pass, which is a much more competitive move, being able to pass your stat gains onto another party member. Cloyster here is another good example of both trying to make more sense and also trying to make things more competitive. The fact that it now learns Spike at level 33. For Dugtrio, this gets a little interesting because these moves at the top with the dashes normally indicates these are the moves the Pokemon knows at level 1, but in Dugtrio's case, it's an evolved Pokemon. You can never hatch a baby Dugtrio that will know this move by default. Digging a little deeper, it turns out you can actually run into level 16 Dugtrios in Diglett's Cave, which means that is the only Dugtrio in the game that can learn Tri-Attack. Because at level 16, the Pokemon would know 4 moves: Tri-Attack, Scratch, Growl, and Magnitude. And if it was one level higher, at level 17, it would know Dig, which means Tri-Attack would fall off. So just kind of an interesting piece of trivia. Level 16 Dugtrio, only one that can know Tri-Attack. Alright, so Swinub here, they just gave him Amnesia all the way up at level 55 for Swinub, and level 70 for Piloswine. Sneasel, they've given him Metal Claw at level 65. This just gives him more type coverage, and it kind of also just looks like a move he should know since he has such big claws. And then last but not least is Suicune. They really did some work on this guy, replacing his Water Gun at level 11 with Bubble Beam instead, and then giving him Rain Dance at level 21 in the place of Aurora. Level 41, which is where he used to learn Bubble Beam, instead he now learns Aurora Beam. I'm assuming they probably took his Roar away simply because he was now a staged battle, and they didn't want him blowing you out of the battle. Pokemon not in Crystal. So this goes over all of the Pokemon that you cannot catch within Pokemon Crystal itself. You've got a lot of the same stuff as Gold and Silver when it comes to Generation 1 Pokemon. All of the Gen 1 starters, all of the fossil Pokemon, and then all of the legendary Pokemon. The Mareep family, Girafarig, and Remoraid, they all need to be transferred over from either Gold or Silver into Crystal. The Mankey family has to come from either Red, Yellow, or Gold, and then Vulpix either Blue, Yellow, or Silver. And the Legends, which are Mew and Celebi, they are not catchable in any Pokemon games up to this point, outside of special distribution events. Page 18 covers headbutting trees and the Pokemon that will come out of them. You can see in Crystal version you can catch basically everything that has a chance of falling out of a tree, including Ekans, Spinarak, Venonat, Ladybug, Hoot, and Noctowl, which couldn't fall out of trees at all in the other 2 games. In Generation 2, certain trainers would call you occasionally about Pokemon outbreaks. The amount of trainers that will call you about outbreaks has been reduced reduced in the Crystal version, so you will no longer get calls from people about Snubbles, Rembraids, or Meryl outbreaks. Page 24 goes over some in-game event changes. This goes over prizes from the game corner, as well as in-game trades. In Goldenrod City, Abra got cheaper in Crystal. You can now get Cubone and Wobbuffet, but they did get rid of Dratini, which isn't too big of a deal considering you can get that extreme speed Dratini later in the game. For the Celadon City game corner, you can now get a Pikachu. Mr. Mime and Eevee are gone. You can get a Porygon for cheaper than you could previously. And now Larvitar is the highest priced prize. I'm not really sure why you would save up all your coins for a Larvitar though, just because you can still get them at the end of the game at Mount Silver. For in-game trades, they made the Machop trade in Goldenrod City a lot easier by requiring just an Abra, which you could get for really cheap from the Goldenrod City game corner. But it was pretty obvious they added this as a way for players to get past Whitney, because Machop would be super effective against her Pokemon. Specifically the Miltank that was pretty hard. The one with the rolling out move, god damn it. The Blackthorn City trade was also changed. It's now a Dragonair for a Dodrio. Pewter Cities is completely different. You can now trade Haunter for Xatu. And then finally, a trade was added at the power plant, where there wasn't a trade at all before. And this one's for a Magneton that they'll give you for a Dugtrio. Something about these trades, I just kind of get the feeling they were obsessed with threes, because the Blackthorn City one has a Dodrio, the power plant has Dugtrio and Magneton, so I guess the Illuminati is confirmed. By this point, we've hit the official start of the walkthrough, which is the part of the book where they actually guide you area by area through the game. I just want to skim through this and highlight the specific crystal bits that are new and that we haven't already covered. There isn't too much new or different until you hit Route 30 and 31. Bugcatcher Wade will give you his phone number and he'll give you a call whenever he has a spare berry. There are a lot of minor item placement changes in Crystal version, and just to save time and not to bore you to death, I won't be covering all of them. I'll just mention if something interesting actually got moved around or added. I've already hit on the Ruins of Alph pretty thoroughly earlier, so I'll just give a quick overview of the flow of how this thing works in Crystal version. In each of the puzzle chambers, which were all in Gold and Silver, there is now a message written on the back wall, and if you perform an action based on that message, a secret passage will open and there will be a treasure chamber within it. And the action that you have to perform is something pretty basic. So the first one, for example, it says escape, all written out in unknown language. And so you use an escape rope, and then when you go back in the chamber, the door is open for you to go into the treasure room. And then after you grab the treasure out of the treasure room, there's a hole in the ground that you can fall into, and there is another chamber full of even more cryptic words for you to decipher. You can see on the screen before you right now a listing of all of the amazing treasure you can get from these treasure rooms. And by amazing, I mean it's all pretty meh, except for the Moonstone, the Charcoal, and the Mystic Water. Moving on to Route 34, which is the route just to the south of Goldenrod City. There's a picnicker here named Gina that will give you her phone number, and she will call you up to give you leaf stones. You can also exchange phone numbers with Camper Todd, and he'll give you calls every once in a while to tell you about sales that are happening at the Goldenrod department store. I also forgot to mention, but in Azalea Town, Kurt, the guy who makes Pokeballs out of apricorns, he will now take multiple apricorns at one time from you, so he can make more than one ball at a time. I've already talked about most of the new additions in Goldenrod City. Buena's Password, the new radio show, changes to the game corner's prizes, the move Tutor that will appear after you beat the champion, and so on. A schoolboy named Alan on Route 36, which is the route where Sudowoodo is at, will take your phone number and call you to give you Firestones. In Pokemon Crystal, after you beat Team Rocket in Goldenrod City, you'll get an item called the Clear Bell, and then you need to take that item to the Tin Tower in Eclectic City for the story encounter with Suicune. And it's important that you catch the Suicune here, because you do need to have Suicune, Rayquaza, and Entei before you can catch Ho-Oh in this game. At the route with the Moo Moo Farm on it, you will find a lass that will take your phone number as well, and she'll call you up to give you Thunderstones. The Battle Tower. The Battle Tower is one of the major new inclusions in Olivine City, and I'll actually touch on it later, because I kind of feel like it deserves its own area in this video. Catching Lugia in Crystal is pretty much the same as Gold and Silver. You just need to have the Silver Wing in your inventory, and then visit the Whirl Islands. And you get the Silver Wing at Pewter City, so it's all the way in the post-game still. Cyan Wood City is the home to the Pokemon Seer that I mentioned earlier, you know, the worthless edition. This is also where you'll encounter the new character Usign, or Usween, or whatever his name is, and he'll challenge you to a battle. I feel like they marketed this guy a lot with Crystal version, but he's really not that big of a deal in the game itself. He just pops up every once once in a while. Jumping across the world to Route 42, which is the route in front of Mount Mortar. There's a fisherman here who will call you about water stones if you give him your phone number. Mount Mortar itself is very weird because they've completely changed the map layout without really changing the map layout. And most of the items in here are still the same as well, but they've just been placed slightly differently. I'm not going to touch on all the changes, just know that for some reason they basically redid Mount Mortar. I'm not sure at all why they did this. The ice path is one of the most drastically redesigned areas in the entire game. In Gold and Silver, it looked like pretty much any other cave that just happened to have some patches of ice on the ground that you would have to slide around on. Whereas now in Crystal version, it looks like a proper ice cave. The Dragon's Den in Blackthorn City we've already talked about, just the changes in how you get your gym badge for this town, and the fact that you can get an extreme speed Dratini from here, which can then become an extreme speed Dragonite. Whoop whoop. The changes in the post-game in Kanto are pretty minor, and we've actually already covered all of the bigger ones, so we're gonna skip over this section. Pokemon locations. I don't want to go over all the changes to where you can find Pokemon, but there are some that are worth pointing out. For example, you can now catch Growlithes to the west of Violet City on Route 36. This was probably done to allow you to have a fire type in time for Bugsy. You can catch both Gligar and Skarmory in Crystal, whereas you can only catch one or the other in Gold and Silver. You can now catch wild Sneasels in the ice path, which you couldn't do in either Gold or Silver. Previously, you had to wait all the way until Mount Silver, so this is a good improvement. Gen 2 in general got a lot of flack for having a lot of the more interesting new Pokemon locked behind Kanto, so it's nice that they moved at least Sneasel forward in the game a little bit. Another major new selling point for Crystal was the fact that Pokemon sprites now move when they enter battle. It's not a bad update. Alright, last but not least, the Battle Tower. Pokemon Crystal had the first Battle Tower of the entire franchise. This version of the Battle Tower is divided up into different level classes. There's level 10, 20, 30, and 40, and to compete in each class, you can only use Pokemon at that level. The battles are 3 versus 3, you can't have any duplicate Pokemon, and none of your Pokemon can be holding the same items. Each run would have you fight 7 trainers, and then you would receive stat boosting vitamins. You know, all the good stuff. And now, after seeing all these changes and additions that were made for Pokemon Crystal, let's answer the age-old question: was buying Pokemon Crystal version in 2001 a good purchase? And the answer is, I don't know. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know in the comments down below if I missed anything important. Oh geez, I hope I didn't miss anything important, or this is gonna be embarrassing. Thank you, and bye-bye.